Tonight on Currents News, a special salute. The heroes of our nation, putting civilians first, serving our country and protecting our rights. They thought their job was done, but now veterans are being recruited for yet another mission. It's what kept him going after the war. He traded army boots for running shoes and never stopped. A Vietnam soldier's 43rd marathon. Then this.
I always tell people this is really my last mission on Earth.
Taking warriors to Lourdes, Knights of Columbus sponsoring a pilgrimage like no other. Plus, she stepped up to serve after her brother died overseas. Now she's turning 100 and looking back on her life and how she paved the way for women in the Coast Guard today. I'm Christine Persichetti. Our Veterans Day special starts right now. They defended this nation. Now Catholic war veterans are looking to help their fellow soldiers in any way they can. But their numbers are dwindling, so they're upping their recruitment efforts to ensure they can continue their work well into the future. Currents News' Jessica Easthope tells us they want you. She has the story from their base in Belrose, Queens.
We team up with the Knights of Columbus.
This is what a brainstorming session looks like for the Catholic War Veterans and Auxiliary of the USA. The organization has reached out to help anyone and everyone it can for the last 78 years. And now it's time to map out the future.
Who's going to take our place when we pass away or move? So it's very important to get the younger generation involved.
Want to be a member? You must be a practicing Catholic and a veteran or related to a veteran who has served in active duty for at least 6 months. But what the team does knows no boundaries.
We cross the lines. They might not be able to join the Catholic War Veterans, but we still help everybody.
After World War II, the Catholic Veterans had more than 250,000 members. Now they're down to about 8,000. Most of their members are from the Vietnam War generation, and just 5% have fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, a population that's been difficult to recruit.
I know what they went through, what they see over there. And there's a lot of suicides across the board. They just can't handle coming back.
Recruitment used to happen at church, but as less and less young people are going to Mass, membership numbers have plummeted.
We know what they've gone through, and it's a form of isolation.
But the organization knows it can still help. They've provided financial support, been a liaison between veterans and the VA, and gotten through to those who've sacrificed their emotional well-being fighting for freedom.
Whatever we can do, we're going to repay them as best we can.
This year, these men are spending Veterans Day packing up supplies to send to American troops in Ukraine, one of the many ways they continue their service and fill what they say is a significant void.
It's mind-boggling how we can send troops there and not have the equipment and the facilities that they need.
They're no longer on the front lines, but their call to serve hasn't been silenced. It's gotten louder. In Belrose, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
For more information on the organization, or if you'd like to join, just go to wp2.cwv.org. Coming up later on Currents News, we honor the wounded who came home from the war and lived on to fight another battle. We'll talk to the award-winning author of Wheels of Courage in just a bit. Now to Vietnam. When you've spent 12 months there in the 60s running from enemy fire, running 26 miles is no problem. Mike Rao bravely served his country, and just this past Sunday, he took on another test of his strength, his 43rd New York City Marathon. And at 75 years old, Rao's willpower is stronger than ever. Currents News' Jessica Easthope caught up with him a few days before the marathon.
It's a hand grenade you can see in the front.
For years, Mike Rao was running from something.
While I hold my M16 rifle.
He was 19 when he was handed an Army uniform and a rifle and shipped off to Vietnam.
There's 2 years of my life that I wanted to initially erase and perhaps be able to bury some of the worst part of that experience.
His days were split between exchange of fire in a muddy foxhole and chopping through dense jungle, tracking an enemy that was also tracking him.
When you're tracking something, movement is what catches the eye. Learning how to be still and blend in, or at least move slowly and quietly, That would be more the focus.
But this Queens kid hasn't stayed still since. In a few days, Mike will run his 43rd New York City Marathon. Among the so-called streakers, he's got the third most in the history of the race.
If it were easier, I might not have been so enamored with it.
Mike ran his first marathon in 1978, 9 years after his return from Vietnam. Once he pushed through that tape, he was hooked.
We might call this the power of positive addiction.
The endorphins of a runner's high still catch up to Mike, but no moment has been more glorious than the 1982 marathon.
I'm sprinting, both feet off the ground. My finisher's medal at the time, just what I had hoped for. 2 hours.
In his runner's tool belt for all these years is the focus he found in a foxhole in Vietnam.
That mental focus and the call for your faith. Brooklyn started the race. You can't go more than a couple of blocks without seeing a steeple. This is my New Balance shirt.
Wearing his sponsored gear, Mike will be bolting through the city of churches once again.
I'll see a church spire, and that's the trigger.
His only goal for this marathon is to get to the finish line. But he says if his faith has taught him anything, in life, the finish line doesn't exist. On City Island, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Mike crossed the finish line last week in just over 7 hours, and he says he will definitely be back next year. He's going to take it easy for a week or two, and then he'll start running again on the road to 44. Wow. As we use this weekend to thank all our vets for their sacrifices, we're taking a closer look at the growing diversity in the armed forces. Latinos are the fastest growing minority group in the military. Here's the story of how one vet's experience was shaped by both God and country.
Of heaven and earth.
Father Edwin Ortiz spends his days serving God, but he used to also serve his country.
I had always had that desire of being in the military.
He spent 3 years in the Navy as a hospital corpsman. He was deployed to Japan.
You're walking up to the ship and it's huge.
Father Ortiz is part of the changing landscape of the U.S. military. Each year, it becomes more diverse. Hispanics in particular are the fastest growing minority population. The most recent statistics show 6% of U.S. military veterans are Latino, and that number is expected to double by 2024.
Being in the military, you become part of this big family who's going to challenge you, but they're going to challenge you not to demean you. They're going to challenge you to help you grow.
Father Ortiz encourages other people in the Latino community to join the military. But one of his biggest challenges while deployed, finding time to practice his faith.
It really showed me what my life would be like without God.
And it was a life he didn't like. Father Ortiz decided to enter the seminary. He was ordained in 2019 and now serves at St. Athanasius in Bensonhurst.
We share that bond.
Deacon Anthony Mamalidi spent over 30 years in the Army. Both he and Father Ortiz say there's a lot of similarities when it comes to serving God and country.
We're called to be selfless servants. We're called to give our lives for a cause greater than ourselves.
That desire to serve that really came while working those humanitarian projects with the Marines.
Father Ortiz might be done serving his country, but he will never be done serving God.
Despite the traditionally masculine culture of the military, Hispanic women have been joining the armed forces even faster than men. According to recent studies, Latinas make up almost half of the women in the military. There's a lot more news headed your way, including the fascinating story of this woman in the military, the personal reason why she enlisted. Plus, a pilgrimage like no other, Warriors to Lourdes. We'll tell you how U.S. service members can go for free. And a tribute to veterans on this Veterans Day with the United States Marine Band.
You don't go to Lourdes because you are Catholic. You go to Lourdes because you're human searching for healing.
And some 6 million people go on that search for healing every year. But now the Knights of Columbus are offering a special opportunity to those who have served both God and country. The strong right arm of the church wants any soldier who is suffering from wounds, both visible and invisible, to experience the healing waters first told to St. Bernadette by Mary in 1858. And they will pay any and all expenses for American soldiers. I spoke with the pilgrimage director for Warriors to Lourdes, Colonel Chuck Galena from the United States Marine Corps, about how the trip helps the veterans.
In war, you may have known that not everyone that comes back from war is wounded. There are no unwounded soldiers in war. Suffering from either physical, emotional, or psychological wounds, and very importantly, moral injury. Lourdes gives them a chance to lay these at the feet of the Blessed Mother in terms of their own healing, peace, reconciliation with actions they had, wounds and injuries that they may have and are suffering, and the ability then to heal from those wounds and injury in different ways, in different forms. It has always been an amazing experience for me personally to be able to bring these young men and women and their families, chaplains, and to Lourdes for peace, healing, reconciliation.
It must be a very moving journey. In the Warriors to Lourdes documentary, a Navy chaplain from the Diocese of Brooklyn, Father Mark Bristol, talks about why he wanted to go on this spiritual journey. Let's listen.
I found out about Lourdes in the base chapel. I was hoping to find some answers into where does God want me to do after my deployment.
I also saw some companions of wounded vets talk about their experience. It must be moving for them as well, right?
It's very important. One does not heal alone. One heals with one's family and loved ones. And so it's not just an honor for us to bring the wounded, ill, and injured military personnel or active duty, non-wounded military personnel, but to bring their families, wives, children as well, and have the chaplains available to support them while we're there.
You're a decorated veteran and a Catholic, so you've talked about it's an honor to bring everyone on this pilgrimage, but what does it mean for you? What kind of experience do you have when you go?
Like all of the wounded, ill, and injured that we bring, I'm also one of the wounded, ill, and injured. All of us suffer in one form or another. So it's not only an opportunity for me to annually sort of look at my own life and my own experiences, the own nightmares and so forth that I may experience, but it's also a great honor for me to lead these people to Lourdes. I always tell people this is really my last mission on earth. I've always had the privilege of leading Marines in combat and in peacetime, and it's just a continuation of that mission.
And last May, more than 230 service members, veterans, and their family members took part in the pilgrimage. Applications are now being accepted for next May's trip. So tell us who can apply and how are they chosen?
We receive the applications at warriorstolourdes.com, our website. What we're looking for really is, why are you there? This is a spiritual pilgrimage. What are you looking for? What do you want to get out of it? Those kind of things in their own personal statements. We also request a chaplain's endorsement on each application. Many of our younger military personnel, their families have trouble expressing those kind of feelings of understanding of spirituality and why they need to, or why they feel that this would be of great benefit to them. And the chaplain's endorsements can many times fill that gap. We also, for the wounded, ill, and injured, have to have a very detailed medical annex that describes the wounds and injuries that we're dealing with. And then also, again, the chaplain's endorsement. So we look at all of those factors, and then we down select from there, hopefully with the help of the Holy Spirit. Each year we manage to bring those who are in most need of the pilgrimage. Those that are not selected, that maybe had a good case, but then others had stronger immediate need, then we encourage them to apply again.
That was Colonel Chuck Galena from the United States Marine Corps. If you'd like to apply for the Warriors to Lords pilgrimage, just go to warriorstolords.com. Applications are being accepted through January 15th, 2023. As we take time this Veterans Day to remember those who fought for our freedom at any time in history, we're also focusing on the wounded who came home from World War II and fought for those with disabilities. In the Christopher Award-winning book, Wheels of Courage, How Paralyzed Veterans from World War II Invented Wheelchair Sports, Fought for Disability Rights, and Inspired a Nation, author David Davis writes about how before World War II, if you were paralyzed, you were considered what he calls a no-hoper. But the war was a game changer.
Before World War II, if you were paralyzed, and especially in battle, a severe battle injury, and you were a paraplegic, chances were that you were dead within about 18 months. And that was because mostly infection, bacteria. They didn't have penicillin. And penicillin is developed in the 1930s and then used very effectively when the war starts in vast quantities. The other thing that was happening was better battlefield medical care, so that those who were injured were taken right to the surgical theaters very quickly. So they were attended to quickly. They also were evacuated from the battlefield more quickly, so that they got great care back in the States or wherever the hospitals were. So it was a combination of things, and such that they had learned, unfortunately, from the problems at World War I.
Davis calls the disabled World War II vets pioneers who created a new paradigm for people with disabilities. He writes that they took charge of their fates and integrated themselves into society, from inventing wheelchair sports to fighting for the rights of the disabled.
At the time, think about it, there were no curb cutouts, there were no ramps to buildings, no buses that would kneel. Disability was stigmatized, not just in the United States, but all over. And there had never been this vast number of, in this particular case, paraplegics. So they did take their fate in their hands. And all they were saying was, if you can help with accessibility and accommodation, we can do anything. We can hold down jobs. We can, if you have cars that have hand controls, we can go into the cars, put our wheelchairs in the back seat, drive to a job, drive to a home. And that was the other thing, homes that were built to accommodate their disabilities. So you had ramps, you had widened doorways, you had bathrooms that were accessible for when you were in a wheelchair.
Davis tells us 2 companies in the Diocese of Brooklyn stepped up and put the disabled veterans to work, Bulova Watch Company and Pan Am, and both created wheelchair basketball teams. You can get a copy of David Davis's book, Wheels of Courage, on Amazon.com or at a bookstore near you. Still to come on Currents News.
It makes me feel young again to see those pictures.
A World War II veteran reminisces about the very unique job she held during the war. And the patriotic sounds of the United States Marine Band. We'll take a listen when we come back. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number, 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. It's a $3 million effort to provide permanent shelters for homeless veterans. This is the first phase of 25 tiny homes in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. A group called Veterans Welcome Home and Resource Center is making it all happen. The second phase will add 8 duplexes and a resource center equipped with a kitchen and laundry room. Organizers want to have the veterans moved into their new homes before winter begins. A World War II veteran from Wisconsin has a unique story. She served in a select group of women from the U.S. Coast Guard Reserve known as the SPARS that's no longer around. Now she likes to flip through pictures to share her story with others.
It makes me feel young again to see those pictures.
She's a 99-year-old World War II veteran who served in a very unique role as a SPAR.
I like the SPARS very much, and I always would be in the company of the best of the SPARS.
She enlisted after her brother died overseas serving his country. She felt it was her duty to serve.
And after that, my mother didn't want me to join anything in the service, but after my brother was killed, I joined the service.
Goff was stationed in Palm Beach, Florida, and served at one of the stores in the Assembly Hotel.
See?
These memories she's flipping through are some of her most fond ones, including VJ Day, the day the U.S. declared victory.
It was the most fun because we declared victory, and that was the end of our SPARS.
By her side is her granddaughter, Caitlin Dunkel, an Air Force veteran herself. She says her grandma was the reason she joined.
She was always so proud of it. My grandpa was always so proud of it. They've always been so proud of their service that I was just like, I want that pride. I want to be as amazing as she is.
A woman reflecting back on her life, looking at the role her service played, soaking in the joy and pride it brings her.
Marie celebrated a birthday since we covered this story. In July, the U.S. Coast Guard went to her home to help her celebrate her 100th birthday. So happy birthday to her. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. And to help us continue to celebrate Veterans Day, here is the President's own United States Marine Band with a special tribute to all the vets and their families. Thank you for your service.